Stay hungry, stay foolish.
So now in the Innovation Show, we welcome Chief Information Officer for Naughty America, Ian Paul. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Hey, thank you so much, Aidan.
It's great to have you on the show. Your industry's seeing the exact same challenges as many other industries. Anybody in digital business, any kind of entertainment, news, video, all that's been totally disrupted. But before we go into that, Ian, it'd be great to understand your background.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a relationship with the owners of this company back during the dot-com boom. I was a senior systems administrator, moonlighting, doing some consulting work with some clients that I'd found. And they were one of many clients that I consulted with and, did performance tuning and security work for the website in the early days. And they went their merry way, and so did I. I ended up jumping out and going to B school and getting an MBA, and then hopping over to IBM and acting in some product manager roles and some sales executive roles ultimately. And I received a phone call from the owners of the company indicating that they were interested in hiring me back, and they had me come down to the office. And I was blown away. I didn't realize how much they grew in such a short period of time. And it was obvious to me they certainly did need a CIO, and we came to an agreement, and that's how I ended up on board.
I read a great article you did, and you were talking about the challenges in the industry and how it's been totally disrupted by tube sites, etc. And it got me thinking that it's very, very similar to what's happened with news and video and Blockbuster and Netflix. And could you talk us through the kind of history of the industry?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, everyone's familiar with the days of buying DVDs in the bookstore. Maybe you might have bought them online early on. The internet itself certainly disrupted all of that. There wasn't really a lot to do on the internet in the late 90s, if you all recall, or those that remember. You could look up stock quotes, go to Amazon and buy some books, have some conversations with some people. So, it was obvious to most that pornography was a huge opportunity. And a few companies sought out that opportunity and innovated and developed things like digital transaction processing. Just payment processing itself was largely pushed by adults, and as well as video streaming. And so Naughty America was born during that time. And it really excelled at pushing the limit of the kind of quality and the size of the videos that could be delivered. And when it did that, it was able to capture an enormous amount of traffic because people were interested in that. They wanted they were getting better internet connections. They were getting the DSL or the cable internet, and they were hungry for a higher quality product. And so Naughty America delivered that, captured a lot of market share, developed the brand. And that worked out well for many years. There was a huge rise in the business until around, I'd say, 2007 or 8, when a group of folks released several different tube sites and pirated content that was out there and put it for free on these tube sites and made money off of advertisements and basically acquired the traffic. I mean, why would you go to any sort of pay site when you can just go to a tube site and see that content for free? And by acquiring the traffic, they could then monetize off of advertisements and even directing the traffic back to their own paid sites. That gave them an enormous infusion of cash to go consolidate smaller players in the industry and either keep them operating as a pay site or just taking the content and rolling it into the tube site. And that was very, very destructive for the industry, for studios that were producing the content themselves. That was very destructive during that time. And I'm sure if you search around the internet, you can find some remnants of discussions and debates about that time in the adult and entertainment industries. history on the internet.
We saw that happen in news industry, for example, where many other sites, they became kind of an Amazon kind of aggregator for the news. And in a way, in the entertainment industry, in the early days of the social networks and Facebook, people built their traffic on Facebook to direct it back to their own owned properties. And that's the way I see the parallel to the adult industry with the tube sites, because the tube sites built the relationship with the audience. And as you said, it was free. So why would you ever go through a paywall or a subscription?
I think it's a valid parallel. And I think if we looked at other industries and what's possible with internet technology and how it can be used to acquire traffic in legitimate and illegitimate ways, I think the parallel is the perfect one.
Because there's another one, Ian, you mentioned about the late 90s. So the adult industry were leaders in video, in streaming video, in, as you said, payment systems. There was so much innovation happening there from a very, very early stage. And they drove a lot of that innovation, even before Vimeo, before YouTube, before all the mainstream tube sites, essentially. Before streaming became ultra mainstream, it was driven by the adult industry.
That's absolutely true. I think during that time, you didn't have as many large internet companies with big R&D budgets. Now, of course, you have folks like Google and Facebook, and you had Google during that time, but it just wasn't as big. Today, they have huge R&D budgets that completely dwarf the adult entertainment industry. And so we've moved from being a forefront innovator to almost I want to say not an early adopter, but an early adapter of something that's come out of a mainstream R&D, a research and development department. And we're sitting there trying to bring it to the market and saying, okay, well, this is how you made it. Here's how you can make money off of it. So we're adapting a lot of these products and taking advantage of these large R&D departments that the mainstream companies have.
That's the other problem for entertainment industry and news industries. All of a sudden, you've been a content company and the world's become technologically advanced, or digital technology companies have become content companies. And that is the best way to be in this world, is when you're led by technology, led by data, led by personalization. And that's where the real struggle we see in the industry.
Yeah, because once you're a digital content company, your content can be pirated or copied or what have you, and it can really damage you. And you can get into a discussion of intellectual property rights, but today the tube sites operate a little bit more legitimately, but they hide behind laws like the DMCA. So, for instance, we'll find a video of ours and we'll inform them that they have one of our videos, but you know what? The law provides them a certain amount of time to comply with our takedown request. And so that video gets to sit up there for that entire time. And when they pull it down, guess what? Another mysterious user uploads it again. Even all of these intellectual property laws can be circumvented and played with. So it's protecting IP from that standpoint. Yeah, we do it, but it's certainly not a survival strategy. You have to do it, but it's not going to really advance you. If this was any other industry, you would have government entities cracking down, proposing changes to the law, but no one in any sort of governmental position wants to be the advocate for the adult entertainment industry. It's political suicide. Yeah. So, we're left in the wild, wild west, which is fine. We've figured out strategies to adapt. We're certainly not bitter. It just makes us very focused on the direction we have to go, and that's innovation.
I suppose another challenge you see, and because of how easy it is to become a publisher, anybody who has a blog, anyone who has a camera, and the smartphones become the camera, we've seen a massive rise in user-generated content or bloggers, and that's very equivalent to what's happening in the adult industry as well, where you have people just setting up sites themselves, you have people setting up their own home videos, you have uploading to the tube sites, all that kind of video as well. And while the quality pales in comparison to the work you would do, for example, for some people, it's good enough, and it challenged the industry even further.
Yeah, and I think one of the bigger challenges is regulation. So we operate our company inside of a very heavily regulated framework. So for every scene that we put out, we have a terminal here in the office, and if the FBI comes here, they can sit down at this terminal that we have prepared for them and look up any scene that we filmed, and they can see the copy of the driver's licenses of the performers. They can see the consent release forms. They can see all of this huge paper trail that shows that we're operating legally and everything's above board. When you're dealing in the realm of user generated content, I think you start moving into territory where when people typically object to pornography, that's the kind of stuff they're thinking of, this huge unregulated piece of it. And so that becomes a difficulty. On the other hand, certainly it helps fill in consumer preference gaps that we might not be addressing. So we look at that information. We see, hey, what are people producing? What's more on the amateur end of things, and how can we adapt that to our content?
So what you guys have done is really focused on high quality content, high quality actors, much like, say, the Wall Street Journal or Financial Times, specialist sites that really put out top quality content. And you know that if you go to that site, this is the type of quality content you're going to get.
Absolutely, and coupled with innovation. So how do we keep raising the bar? These tube sites set an expectation amongst their users that the content should be free. So how do we differentiate that content, not only in terms of quality, but just in format and innovation? And we can get into the discussion of virtual reality. If we can innovate, then users expect, okay, well, that's so much different. That's so much better. We're going to have to pay for that. And it doesn't seem odd to them to have to pay. Whereas if you give them something they can find anyway on a tube site, the common person's going to say, why should I pay for that?
Yeah, and before we go into that, because I know you've really, really pushed the bar with that and raised the bar. Another part I just saw was your strategies for attracting subscribers are very similar to any other world, even down to your choice of actors with high social followings.
It's challenging for us because many websites that you typically advertise on, or even Google, they have restrictions on what we can do. And so we have to be even more creative on how we acquire traffic. For instance, AdWords. You can't use AdWords that link from Google to any sort of adult site. So there's no advertising to people who might even be legitimately searching for this particular actress. We can't place an ad to connect them to the content that we have for that actress because of this discrimination against people who look at adult content. So we have to be very creative about how we kind of breadcrumb content out there on the internet to lead people back to the premium content that we have.
Can you share any of that with us?
I think you'd be more interested in the production aspects of it than actually the strategy itself. So when I describe the strategy to you, you're going to say, okay, that makes sense. That seems simple, but how you pull it all together is the key. The idea is, look, we have a lot of different channels. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have Snapchat, we have just sites you might stumble upon on Google. And then in the adult world, we have some legacy sites that have just been around a long time that get traffic. And then you have the tube sites. You have the performers' own Twitter accounts and Twitter itself. You have all of these different things. Now, every day we're releasing new content. We're releasing new scenes. And we need to market those scenes like Hollywood would market a movie. But we need to market it across all of those different channels. So certainly what we had been doing before was, after we get the scene, back from production, we figure out, okay, how do we create little snippets that are appropriate for each channel? So Instagram could have, a PG-13, very nice photo. Snapchat might be a takeover by one of the performers. Facebook's really difficult for us to work with. But you can see there's different ways that you would market this scene that's released every day across these different channels. The challenge for us, though, was the delay that was creating, in that you would receive some sort of scene back from production and then have to, after the fact, create all this content. What we did is we shifted the content creation for all of these channels to the actual production environment itself. That means on set, there's a photographer shooting actual content specifically for each channel, rather than us having to kind of crawl through content that's already been shot to try to maybe get something that would work on a particular channel. And by pushing it down to where the content was being created originally and shooting content specific for each channel, even to the extent of doing interviews, with the performers that can become snippets that go here and go there. That's really how you gain some efficiencies. And I think that's where most people get lost, most companies get lost, is it's hard to do it all. And you get just dwarfed by the amount of channels and places that you have to market to. And the more you can create efficiencies by moving that close to where the content was created to begin with, the more successful you're going to be.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I remember in the early days of digital marketing, telling people who were creating TV ads to go, while you're shooting your TV ad, shoot a YouTube version, shoot a 20-second version, shoot a 15-second version in the workflow, rather than having to come back and try and edit it in, because it won't make any sense. And
well, that's absolutely right. And I was reading an article about from the Netflix CEO, and he was talking about how they don't really want to adopt virtual reality. It's a different format. I'm thinking to myself, hey, you're shooting these Netflix originals. Shoot some virtual reality content while you're at it. You're already there. And release it as just supplementary content. It can't do anything but help you. And they finally did that with the Stranger Things original series that they did. There was some VR content that was shot alongside it, and they released that.
Yeah, because it can really act as a breadcrumb and bring people back to the main piece of content that they may pay for, because it can be the link that sells the chain.
No, certainly. We have to be very, very efficient in how we pay for content production, right? If you're spending X amount per scene and you're releasing 2 or 3 scenes a day, you want to make sure that the return on investment is as high as possible. If you're producing things that people aren't consuming, it's not what they want, then you're wasting your money. So I think there's a definite parallel here to the news industry, quite certainly.
Kind of covered all the kind of common problems that we've both had, but then let's talk about your innovation, where you in particular have been driving a VR and 360 strategy.
Yeah, the virtual reality for us was always something we dreamed about. We would joke about it because look, we've been virtual reality's been romance to us since the mid to late 90s, right? It's something that came about and then went away, and it was like, well, what happened to that? That would be so great if we could have virtual reality pornography. And when we tried, I think it was the Oculus Rift demo at some conference we went to. We tried to go to all the conferences just to pay attention to trends and whatnot. We said, look, this is possible. We could do this. Let's fast track the development. And we essentially bought every piece of equipment we could find to do this and locked ourselves in a room until we figured out how to make it possible. And not only possible, but how could we do it inexpensively so that we could iterate very, very quickly in looking at that analytic data and feeding that back into the production process and producing better and better and better quality content. And we released our first virtual reality scene actually in July of 2015. And we've been releasing 1 or 2 videos since then. It's been tremendously successful for us. So
have you built that then into the workflow, going back to what you said about, adapting for the platform? And do you still tend to shoot in normal HD and then 4:3 VR as well?
Oh yeah, no, we release content for 2D, for whether it's in the format of a 4K or HD. We have a huge legacy of customers that are watching in 2D, and VR is something that we do as a supplement to that. It's becoming more and more important. But it's like when DVDs came out. VHS didn't just get flushed down the toilet. You have to balance both formats for a while until you can shift over. The shift over to VR is probably going to take a little bit longer because it's so much different. It's not just like increasing the quality from VHS to DVD. It's a whole new way of experiencing and recording content. So I have a feeling both formats are still going to be popular as we move forward, with virtual reality taking more and more as we innovate as producers in how we shoot the content. Today, our content's in 180. We do that to increase the pixel density so that it's very crisp and clear in front of you. And we don't let you look behind you for that reason. You can imagine stretching a cell phone screen all the way behind you. The part that you're looking at wouldn't be very clear. So we're keeping it condensed. It's all point of view. So you're not ever a third person in the room. It's always from your vantage point. But we're going to innovate beyond that. And as we do, we're going to attract more and more customers.
Yeah, and how you mentioned about like you're kind of going to be riding these two horses at the same time, where you have your legacy customers and your upgraders, I suppose, your early adopters to VR. And are you going to introduce like a price point difference there, or how will you do that? Because obviously it takes more investment, or are you just kind of going, this is our future, we need to innovate, we need to experiment now to save ourselves in the future?
Look, when we came out with our mobile product, we didn't charge people a separate amount to have mobile access. The way we look at it is we have a relationship with you, the customer, and we want to support you in satisfying your desires across any situation in your life. So if you're on the road, you might be using your mobile phone. If everyone's left your house and you want to close the blinds and don the headset, we have you there too. If you just want to use your laptop, you're good. So we want to develop a relationship that's not segmented by device. It's about our relationship with you as a member of our site.
Brilliant. So you're taking an omnipresent approach where you just kind of going, we're just customer first, audience first strategy.
Well, for us, it makes a lot of sense, right? You have these other adult VR startups that have no 2D back catalog, right? So our value proposition to the VR customer is, hey, you want VR? We have that. It's the best. Plus, as a bonus, you get all this really high quality 2D that you might not have tried before. Great. To the 2D customer, our value proposition is, hey, you love 2D. We have the best quality 2D. Plus, you get this bonus. If you ever get one of these devices, you're going to have access to this cool new VR content. So for us, it really makes sense to play both sides.
Ian, it's been great to talk to us. Appreciate you taking the time, and we wish the best of luck.
Thanks so much, and thanks for having me.
Thanks a million. Ian Paul, CIO with Naughty America.